What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be taking a peek over here at the Bitcoin price chart as it sits at 112,900, while the total market cap of the cryptocurrency market sits right back on top of that peak from back over there in December of last year, as Ethereum had reached back to its highs. Now, so far, it's back tested that breakout level that it was stuck underneath for nearly 4 years, still sitting on top. Of course, we'll peek over here at the XRP price chart, the US stock market, the Bitcoin dominance, and just try to tie together the entire picture of where we're at right now with Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market. Now, if you caught Markets in the Morning yesterday, I presented really both sides of the story. We've brought up this example of Bitcoin many times here on the channel. I'd probably say 2 to 3 dozen times talking about this right in here. Other examples of where price behavior can do just that is like when you have over here with gold, right? We talked about this a lot too when we were in the middle of our ABC correction for Bitcoin, that this type of structure tends to do that. You go back up to the highs, ABC, then you go into the breakout. The challenge, of course, with Bitcoin right now is this aggressive move after setting a little bit of a high. I talked about that in my video on Friday, that if we weren't able to get the altcoin market to break out into a new all-time high and Bitcoin swept these highs but aggressively pulls back, then probably not ready for the altcoin market to be able to go. But the question, of course, being, is this just going to end up being a miniaturized version of one of these, where we just continue to repeat these things as we're in a parabola over and over? Or have we already bypassed this? And what happened here for Bitcoin was just massively miniaturized in a parabola. We're going to talk about both sides of that in today's video. Right now, I don't think there's enough information on the charts to be able to determine either way. There's things that could happen that would make it pretty obvious to me. Somebody in Markets in the Morning said, hey, if we pulled all the way back down to $85,000, that would be our launch pad to go on. My thoughts are absolutely not, that if we end up going that low, then it's just going to be some type of retrace and then it rolls over and continues lower again. So getting down in here, I think it's a very easy line in the sand to say, hey, Bitcoin has already topped for the cycle. It's been a great run. It's been fun. But that would end up being a pretty clear line in the sand for me that, you know, we've had 3 pushes in here for Bitcoin. We've lost all of our steam. It's probably going to roll over and it's probably going to go down even further. But that's a pretty far ways down. I would hope that I could probably determine that or be more convicted before we actually got to that point. I think places that are still clear to say it's okay, it's not that it's broken anything or any lines in the sand. Still, if we just go back and touch the high from back over here, back in December, that still wouldn't be unusual to still continue building a parabola and continue marching up higher. But I think if we got down in here and we got into like 103s or 104s, then you're really just not doing things that you would be doing if a parabola was still continuing to form, and that it was just some type of muffled version of one over here for Bitcoin. You could see that over here for gold as well, that you just wouldn't expect for us to pull back in here if we're in a full-fledged parabola breakout. Now, what's not uncommon, and you can see it over here in gold right in here, after the initial breakout happens, it goes into some ranging behavior. And even in here, it does set a new high and then pulls back down to the lows. And this is on the weekly time frame. So if I swap us over to the daily, you can kind of get a look at that and see that here's the ABC correction, here's the breakout, here's a range that takes place in here, but it still just maintains this range before it then marches up and continues to go. Which is why, being right in here, you know, how do you determine definitively to say that's not what's happening right now, right? But what we don't tend to see is we don't tend to see prices fall back down into here, especially getting below these levels. If we're entering into some type of parabola, we should still continue marching up, right? We shouldn't be falling back in here. This range should just continue, and we should still just march our way to the upside. And that's true over here as well, right? Not falling back in. By the time we fall back in and we start losing those highs in there, we're already in a long, drawn-out correction for Bitcoin. And I think this would be long and drawn out as well. And of course, you know, we see these things fall down to the downside. Everybody's screaming, oh no, now we go straight to whatever, $60,000. It's likely not going to be like that, right? It would likely be real choppy, and then back into retracements and then roll over. But we don't know if it's going to do that just yet, right? And that's just kind of where we are. You could still just be right in here in a range that sweeps the highs and still maintains itself, or you could be back testing the previous high over in here. Both of those are still logical and reasonable. but we just shouldn't see it falling back down below, especially not to 102, 103, 104. I wouldn't expect to see that. So this structure in here, not my favorite, unless if it turns out, just being some type of range and still continues to maintain its lows. Okay, cool. That was crazy. But I have to be on edge and kind of unprepared of was this just a quick parabola that was the weakest parabola we could ever possibly see? And that ended up being it. I'm willing to, change stances if that ends up being the case. There's things that we've presented in here that still don't make it seem like that, at least not right now, right? People would be like, come on, make a decision which one is going to be. It's hard to know right now because here's things you could look at and argue totally differently. Binance Coin yesterday set a brand new all-time high and a daily high close. So that was record high pricing and closes for Binance Coin yesterday. Does that seem normal? Not to me, because we go back throughout historical behavior of the crypto market, and Binance doing that is typically an indicator that the market is doing well. You look over here at Ethereum, and Ethereum has been in this very long correction that has taken out its highs, right? At $4,000, it's been holding it down. Finally, we escape from that level. We buck up near the highs. We've seen this story all before. This is all the same stuff that we saw with Bitcoin from back in 2019, right before we head into the C19 crash. And we have the same behavior happen over here for Ethereum. You have the entire crypto market mocking Ethereum at the lows back in C19. Bitcoin's never going back up. It's never going to 60,000. Are you crazy? What does it do? It gets its way back up, and now back up here near these highs once again. This is typically not the type of behavior on a long time frame that would imply, oh yeah, this is just going to crash back down. No, this is typically what happens as it's bucking up against the high to end up going for a breakout. So your argument here for Ethereum and your argument for Binance Coin are both, this looks fine, right? In addition, we have XRP in this extremely prolonged crash, retrace, reaccumulation, bucking against the highs here. Typically, these go 4.236 extensions, and I've shown plethora of examples of that throughout history of this YouTube channel. And that's exactly what Bitcoin does throughout this entire range of a crash, retrace, reaccumulation, back to the highs, and then it goes for a 4.236 extension on the market cap, which for XRP's market cap is about $8, $9. But your alternative argument to, hey, Ethereum looks fantastic. Binance Coin still setting new daily highs. Nothing's broken over here on Bitcoin. And could just be in a technical little range like this right now as it sits in here. It's exactly how they play out. The alternative struggle, of course, is what's happening over in macro. And we just can't get that to cooperate, right? We've got the Russell 2000 still battling against these retracement levels, unable to close above it. And here we are Thursday. It looks like we're going to open to the down a little bit, coming off of some Fed speakers saying, hey, we're not in a hurry to cut. And expectations, of course, over this past few days dropped from 100% expectations to now at 79%. We can't get the Dow Jones to break out, as it as well today over here on the E-mini Dow futures is down about 163 points off of those comments. But right, we're stuck at these levels as the altcoin market as well is at a very big resistance level too, back at the all-time highs from 2021. So we know we have major resistance of historical timeframes here for the altcoin market. When you guys got completely sick of hearing about the Russell 2000 back in 2024, it was this price level that we just couldn't get through, and we had to keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. Guess what? That's where we are. And of course, we got the Dow Jones back at the all-time high. So you have reasons to be like, yeah, we'll see, right? If the Russell 2000 and the Dow Jones reject from these levels and Bitcoin rejects from these levels and pulls down into the 103s, 102s, the argument's a struggling argument. If Bitcoin maintains these levels in this range or maintains that previous high over here at 109,000, and then the Russell goes and busts out and the Dow goes and busts out, well, then we just wasted a lot of our time talking about these things. But that's where we are right now. We're at a level where the stock market hasn't broken out. We know we're at historical resistance levels for these things. We're at historical resistance levels for the altcoin market. And we're trying to see if we're going to end up having the juice to bust out of here, or are there going to be some convincing signs to say, that was actually it for Bitcoin. This price pullback so far for the total market cap of crypto is really just right back on top of that December high. So the current level really doesn't mean anything in regards to how far we've pulled back. And zooming out, right, it's a small move, but we're trying to, obviously we're trying to determine it as quickly as possible. Are there some type of signs implying this broader trend has come to an end? I don't think we have that convincingly yet. And you could argue both ways. And you could argue this Bitcoin dominance, which we keep bringing up, right? It just slipped into bearish territory down in here. got dropping below 40. And of course, when we get into September, we're going to have a cross over here on the MACD, or the moving average convergence divergence. We're going to have our first red print happening in here on the Bitcoin dominance, which is what? Favorable for the altcoin market. So, does Bitcoin top and the altcoins run? And it's like kind of what we normally see, where there's like a month-long period or so, or 3-week period for the altcoin market to be extremely favorable. Maybe, but we just don't have the evidence of it yet. But like I mentioned on Monday's video, it's like these are like the fingernail biting moments for me. We know we're back at resistances. We know we're there at the Russell. We know we're there at the Dow. We know we're there at Total 2 or the altcoin market. We just need some type of trigger to emerge to push these things out of here and convince us that we're breaking out. And you have kind of a mix of both sides, where I say, like, show both angles, right? Like, you're back at all these resistances for the altcoin market, for the Russell 2000, for the Dow Jones, Bitcoin structure. But at the exact same time, you've got favorable things emerging over here for Bitcoin dominance and Ethereum and Binance Coin at the same time that tell a totally different story. And so these are one of those moments where you kind of sit right there in the middle. You got both kinds of sides, and both of them could swing either way, where if you just had the Russell go that way, literally everything else falls in line after that, because then you end up getting a bounce coming out of Total to go set new all-time highs and ricochet off of the December high right now, right? So like the arguments I'm showing right here is there's nothing on here yet to like scream we're going one way or we're going the other way. We know we're at resistance levels. We know we're at support levels. We know we've got some things still setting new highs and things that are threatening to break out, like Ethereum and Binance Coin setting new highs. I've shown this before, and I showed it yesterday in Markets in the Morning. Even with Solana, I can argue it's right on the brink of what happens before it actually goes into a parabola, which why would that have to happen? You would have to have some type of like major breakout happening in the market to be able to enter into that phase, right? Well, that would come, of course, with broader markets. But we're going to need some more price action to emerge in here from the crypto market and from the broader markets to give us like a clear, definitive picture. And you can argue this is just a range, or you can argue this is just testing that high from over here in December, like so. All of those are still fine. But what I don't think you can do, or what I know I can't do right now, is sit here and say, yeah, definitely we've topped, because I can look here at Binance Coin, I can look here at Ethereum, and these like clearly tell me, no, that's not the story. But at the same time knowing, hey, we're at these major resistances that have to break. We're at these major resistances that have to break, and these major resistances that have to break. And if these don't break, then how are we going to break in the crypto market, right? So we need something to emerge here in the market to tell us the story. And that's going to be the things I'm just kind of watching for every day right now. Like, my thesis, like where do I start changing my thesis on what I'm thinking, right? If we start dipping down in here for Bitcoin, it implies, the top still doesn't mean it's not going to be something like this, and then it retraces and the altcoin markets rally into that. Why do I say that? Because you can go back here and look at 2021, the top of Bitcoin came in right here. I can throw Bitcoin right on top and show you that the top of Bitcoin is right here in the Bitcoin dominance fall. And we still continue to fall much further, even after that, for the preceding 4 weeks, right? So the Bitcoin dominance to me, of course, like we're talking about over here on the weekly time frame and the monthly time frame, these weekly and monthly signals on here on the technical indicators are implying that it still has more to fall. And just kind of the big question is, on Bitcoin. And that's just what we're going to be waiting for here in the coming days and weeks. And this is really kind of the best way I can kind of paint how I'm looking at it right now, and still knowing this is the big mamma jamma that we're waiting on to see produce the result. And you guys know that from people who have watched this channel for a long time, but we've seen it over and over again. This thing breaks out, crypto goes with it. And even on these shorter time frames, if it's pulling back, guess what? So is Bitcoin, right? Purple, Bitcoin, candlesticks, Russell 2000. And if the Russell 2000 is breaking out, so is Bitcoin. That's it, escaping the 2021 all-time high right here as the Russell busts through this same level we're talking about. And of course, that's also where the altcoin market rips with it too, here in maroon. So we know the underlying major thing we need to see, of course, is to see just that. And you can just see here with the candlesticks here, Bitcoin, altcoin market, all this stuff together, right? What are we doing? We're shifting right along with broader markets. And so that's unfortunately what we've come to as a market. That's what we depend on. And that's primarily where my eyes are peeled right now, and why we keep talking about all-time highs for the Dow, breakouts for the Russell, because we know we need it. So while Bitcoin's a little waffly in here, still the potential. This is actually just a continued range happening in here. We'll see if these lows hold or if it has to go back and hit 109. Ethereum, of course, producing things that tend to eventually break out and go into new all-time highs. And Binance Coin, of course, continuing to set the new all-time highs, while the Bitcoin dominance becomes technically weaker and weaker and weaker. All these things are favorable for the cryptocurrency market, and this very well could just be just that. But we know where we're at. We know we likely don't want to see $103,000, $104,000, and we know we can start celebrating if we start actually seeing the Russell 2000 go in for breaks and actually shoot its way out of here, closing the week well above that 786 fib level, which was our major resistance from July all the way to November of 2024 and still remains that way. Get out of there. I'm going to bet everything goes absolutely buck wild, because it won't just be that doing it. The Dow Jones would be too, and I'd have no problem betting the altcoin market at the exact same time. So big moment. We're stuck at resistances here for everything in broader markets and here in the cryptocurrency market. We're just checking to see if we're going to end up producing a range to then eventually get it. But my bet is we can stare at this all we want right in here. I bet you the answer is going to come from this guy, the Russell 2000, like it always does. So it's a very intense moment right here for the market. We'll see how things react throughout the rest of the week. And if we can get some type of recovery to come in before tomorrow, that would sure be nice. Otherwise, a little bit of a better reaction with the Russell so far this morning. Now that the markets are actually open, it's just a couple of points below being green for the day. We'll see how it goes throughout the rest of today and tomorrow. But all right, that's going to be it, guys. That's what I see over there in the market. We'll let things continue to play out to give some more clearer pictures. Until the next one, I wish you the best. You guys can check out my newsletter over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com, talking all about where we're at within the market. Again, I speculate there's got to be some type of trigger. That's typically what happens when you break through these highs, and we're all just kind of twiddling our thumbs looking to see if one's going to show up. But I go through all these metrics as well: the Bitcoin dominance, altcoin market, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Russell 2000 as we flash for at a major moment in the market. It's available over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com. There's a link down here in the description of this video to blockchainbacker.substack.com. And this one was posted just a few days ago. And of course, you get access to all the past ones as well. But otherwise, that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.